And Dr. Roush was the 20th president of Center College, highlighting his 22-year work. Can you take this out while I read this? Thank you.
You're good.
I'll put it back on. Okay. 22-year work there with the increasing quality, diversity, number of faculty, staff, and students, and growing enrollment by 40+%. 3 successful campaigns that transformed the college's fiscal plan and raised its endowment to $400 million plus, making both study abroad and internship experience to occur at least once in a student's undergraduate experience, and a guaranteed graduation in 4 years, both part of the center commitment. Growing up in Ohio, Roush graduated summa cum laude with a bachelor's degree in English from Ohio University Honors College in 1972, and completed his master's degree in 1973 and PhD in the spring of 1979 from Miami University. He was a student athlete in football at Ohio University, earning academic All-American honors during his 3-year varsity season. Excuse me. Dr. Roush's career began in higher education at Miami University as an assistant football coach in 1972, transitioning to administration in 1976 and completing his work there in December of 1981 as executive assistant to the president. He joined the University of Richmond in January of 1982 as executive assistant to the president and was made vice president for planning, executive assistant to the president, and secretary to the board of trustees in 1990. Roush served as captain in the U.S. Army Military Intelligence and as a regular speaker and contributor to professional journals on topics of leadership, governance, and finance in higher education and intercollegiate sports. The most important thing is being married to Susie Miller Roush for 46 years and being the father of 2 sons and a grandfather to 6. Would you please join me in welcoming Dr. Roush.
Well, I got here for the second half. Why don't you guys come on up? In fact, I may end up sitting down.
Please feel free. Please feel free.
We're going to turn this into a conversation, not a speech. Yeah.
That's great. We've had lots of speeches and not enough conversation.
Right. The bar you can here.
Absolutely.
Right, you can.
You may have it too. We've got 100 of them.
Okay. So give me your email address, because I'm going to send you this.
Seth.
Seth?
Yep. At
At
Degree Insurance.
At
Degree Insurance.
Degree Insurance. All one word?
All over
.com?
It's .co actually. No F.
I've never seen that, heard of that.
No, someone wants to charge us.
Company. Okay.
Probably save my money for the CO for the M part, so.
So you don't need to take notes, I'm going to send you the whole thing. And so what I do, and this has always been my habit, I've known Stephen Trachtenberg for a long time. And he's kind of more into musings. I'm into teaching. And so I prepared remarks, I always do. Now, I'm going to not read them to you verbatim, but close, without apology. And then I'm going to send it to you. I'll send it to you guys as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So I begin with a quote from Abigail Adams, born in 1744. Some of you may or may not know she was the wife of our second president, mother of our sixth. Ms. Adams was a force with whom to be reckoned, as she was an early advocate for women's suffrage and women's education, and one who openly opposed slavery, I remind you, in the late 1770s. And now the quote from her letter written to her husband some 250 years ago. These are the times in which a genius would wish to live. It is not in the still calm of life or the repose of a pacific station that great characters are formed. The habits of a vigorous mind are formed in contending with difficulties. Great necessities call out great virtues. When a mind is raised and animated by scenes that engage the heart, then those qualities which would otherwise lay dormant wake into life and form the character of the hero and the statesman, close quote. I believe here in mid-October of 2021 that we have been living and find ourselves still in such a time. Our world continues to be challenged by a health crisis of century-like proportions. Our nation is struggling, again, with matters associated with fairness of treatment under the law and issues of equity related to opportunity among our citizens. And it is very clear that our world has become more dangerous in recent months and years. This said, I remind us that none of these crises are first-time issues in America. And to be clear, I stand in stark contrast to those who claim and want you to believe that the sky is falling or that the sun may stop coming up each morning. Please understand that on this day I will make the case that we can and will and must choose hope over despair, claim victory over defeat, seek sunlight rather than darkness, choose truth over placating those who are quick to accuse, make demands without foundation, and lead with hate. As we work together to move past the uncertainty, ugliness, and terrible loss associated with the current pandemic and these complicated times in which we live, it is you, men and women, all three of you, and others like you, and there are many, who have made the choice to invest yourselves in leadership and education, who give me reason to be hopeful, profoundly so. You're a part of an enterprise that seeks to educate and inspire, perhaps preparing young people for extraordinary lives of work and service and leadership. Quote, great necessities call out great virtues. When a mind is raised and animated by scenes that engage the heart, then those qualities which would otherwise lay dormant wake into life and form the character of the hero or heroine and the statesman or stateswoman. Close quote. Remember these words from Ms. Adams. So what does all this mean for those who lead during these interesting and challenging times? For more than 20 years, I have taught a class titled Rainmaking. The course focuses on preparing oneself for service and leadership. Rainmaking, the course, I remind my students on day one of two things regarding the human condition. One, that each of them, you and me too, is a work in progress, a whip. Forever so, I might add. I believe this to be true about each of us generally, and I know it is true of those who lead. Really good, effective leaders are always learning, always testing and being tested, always looking for new ways to motivate and inspire. Make a note of those words, forever a work in progress. And two, I remind them that being smart, blessed with a good mind, is a powerful asset, a distinct advantage, a true blessing. But it, being smart, is insufficient. Being smart enough, a combination of words about leadership and attributable to Malcolm Gladwell in his 2008 book, is what matters more in life. Gladwell suggests, and I agree, that hard work, the capacity for sacrifice, the understanding of team, encouragement and support from others, particularly in one's early years, that thing we call common sense that often, it seems, is not so common, are additions to having a good mind or even a superior mind that are essential, I repeat, essential for leading a life of accomplishment, success, joy. Make a note of those words and remind yourself on occasion that I am smart enough. Some years ago, I authored a chapter and book in a text on leadership. My first advice then and now was burn all the cue cards, dump all the checklists, and if anyone tries to sell you his or her version of a leadership cookbook, politely walk away. This is a tough first step, as all of us are tempted or want to think that there is some sort of leadership master plan, and that at heart, all leaders are alike, or at least nearly so. The paradoxical truth is that by definition, every leader has unique gifts, has his or her leadership fingerprint, if you will. No two leaders, regardless of common factors such as age, gender, race, sexual orientation, religion, or nationality, are alike. Those who truly excel at leadership learn how to capitalize on their fingerprint. They systematically cultivate their own one-of-a-kind thinking and approach to leadership based on their strengths, needs, and the potential of their organization and the people who work alongside them. Remember that word, fingerprint. And prepare to discover and add value to your own leadership fingerprint. My third point, there's no magic. Having suggested to you that good and effective leadership is an acquired skill, something you choose to be intentional about, learning about, practicing it, getting better at it over time, let me say to you that good and effective leadership, like many good things, is not magic. Particularly just now, good and effective leadership is a habit, is hard work, and is often unappreciated or criticized unfairly. So buckle up, if you will, and prepare yourself to develop and maintain a practice of curiosity, inquiry, and the testing of good ideas. Authentic modern leadership in formal organization is akin to being a skilled athlete who has mastered the fundamentals, but who approaches each play fresh, always observing, learning, and applying new knowledge, even in the heat of action. Good and effective leaders know that there is no magic to being successful. They understand through experience and intuition that each day will require knowledge, flexibility, honesty, humility, focus, trust, judgment, aspiration, inspiration, and more. Write those words down. No magic. My fourth point, and this from the guy who almost always has 3 points, is arguably most important and has to do with courage. To emerge victorious as leader, however one chooses to measure victory, will require leaders who possess a deep and abiding courage. Women and men who stand prepared to do right, no matter the cost. Understand, there is no personal quality I find more attractive or compelling than courage in the profile of a leader. Leaders of courage live their lives with a sense of freedom because they are determined to do the right thing, no matter the cost. There are lessons to be learned about leadership and courage. One of the best ways to learn about this combination is to identify, I think, men and women whose lives as leaders were all about courage. With that in mind, I invite you to study and learn about leadership from a son of Kentucky, and arguably one of our nation's most remarkable citizens ever. So what do some of you know about Abraham Lincoln, our nation's 16th president? You need to find time to learn about Lincoln and his remarkable life. Know that he was an extraordinary success in life, almost in spite of it. Know that his modest upbringing, his early unsuccessful start in politics became assets to him as he fashioned a set of core values and a leadership style that was just right, approaching perfection for the one who would be responsible for preserving the Union and freeing the slaves. Part of Lincoln's genius was that he understood he had no genius. His array of more simple leadership gifts were the genius, an array of personal qualities that allowed him, later in life, still living as a person suffering from self-doubt and depression, to save the Union and begin the removal of the national curse of slavery, to provide leadership to our nation at one of its most desperate moments. He was a leader of immense personal courage. End of story. And I should add that the recent criticism aimed at Lincoln at a few of the demonstrations in our nation over the past year or two is uninformed or misguided at best. Last time I checked, Mr. Lincoln was prepared and then did give up his life for the causes of justice and freedom for all people. Was his record as a person or president perfect? No. Was it profoundly good, great even, in nearly all ways? Yes. Against all odds, he changed the course of our nation and indeed our world. I encourage you to make the effort to learn more about our 16th president and prepare yourself to be inspired. Good and effective leaders understand that they will be required to be courageous. They stand prepared to do so during those weeks, on those days, sometimes only in those moments when the choice is to stand tall, do the right thing, be courageous, even when the cost of doing so may be great, or more likely, even when taking such action occurs in the absolute darkness of night, if you will, knowing that no one will notice or offer applause. You choose courage and you do right. You have been called and have chosen to put yourself out there as leader. So remember and make these several attributes your habits, each of them Lincoln-like. 1, discipline yourself to be a studious listener who is slow to speak and even slower to anger. Let me repeat that one. Discipline yourself to be a studious listener who is slow to speak and even slower to anger. 2, commit yourself and those who work alongside you, particularly in these times, to tell the truth. You can wrap it in love, but tell the truth. Pledge to hold yourself and other leaders with whom you interact to be educated citizens in the life of your organization and the larger community. Prepared to be bold in ways that are honest and equitable and fair-minded. Focused on the common good, not simply drawing attention to oneself or one's organization. 4, find the courage even on what might be the darkest of days, like the current pandemic or worse, to remind yourself that you are blessed, not that life is perfect, or that you and others you love are immune to disappointment or loss, but blessed to be sure. On this day, I'm reminded that Helen Keller, with her multiple disabilities, suggested that, quote, life is either a daring adventure or nothing, close quote. Remember this and celebrate adventure, the adventure associated with leadership. Mark Twain reminded us that, quote, the 2 most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why, close quote. Remember this. And on those really tough days, know that they are part of finding out why. And on a lighter note, from the movie A League of Their Own, quote, it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, everyone would do it. It's the hard that makes it great. Remember this. And on those hard days, believe that your success in such moments is part of what might make your leadership admired. Great, even.
Fabulous. I want that.
And you shall have it.
Thank you.
I'm guessing your emails, I already got it, but I want
You do, it's Mary D at HEItoday.org.
Okay, I do have that.
Yeah. And, oh, that was wonderful. Did you publish that?
So
Sorry.
I'm in the middle of writing a book.
Oh, good.
No, I'm not in the middle. I'm in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Middle would suggest halftime, and I'm not there. And it's going to be about lessons about life, leadership, and adventure.
Great.
One page at a time. And so what I'm doing is picking out elements of some of my work. It's not going to be musings. I've known Tim Trachtenberg. I knew him when I was at the University of Richmond because I was over on that side of Georgia,
Right.
kind of on that side of the states. And so I was at some meetings with him. He probably doesn't remember, I do. And he was a real, he mentioned John Silver at BU. That guy was a piece of work. I mean, he would try to figure out what you might disagree on, and then he would talk, he'd want to talk about it. He was just a combative guy. I mean, and his leadership was to be admired, but it was really uncomfortable. You know, I really didn't know a lot of people that liked John Silver. Now, many of them, myself included, admired him. And I got along fine with him because we would banter back. You know, I didn't want anything from him, he didn't want anything from me.
Yeah.
So we would play from each other, but he was close to being mean-spirited as a leader, and that's wrong. That's really taking advantage of your position, your job. But I remember, I think I heard Stephen Trachtenberg talk maybe 20 years ago, and it was musings then.
Yeah.
I think that's a good word for what he just did.
Yeah. Which I've always loved. I mean, I just could sit and listen to him and I always learn something. You know, it's a story, but there's a lesson in every story.
Oh, absolutely.
And a good life lesson, and I've learned so much from him. It's been such a gift. You are a really good writer, by the way. I know you know that.
So I have 2 professors, like we all did have people, and Sam Krause, still living. He was my Shakespeare professor in the honor program, and what a guy. And he taught well into his 70s, and then I think he still teaches a seminar. And the guy's got to be, when I was thinking about him, when I got to High University in 1968, and I had him in the very first term, I took 6 courses from the guy. And, but, you know, I don't know how old he was. He probably was about 29. You know, he finished his PhD, but he had a wife. They had a couple of kids. So he seemed in such a different life stage. I sort of associated him with my parents. He wasn't. He was probably about 10 years older than me, but I, you know, it's not, he didn't have any bald as a cucumber. And he had a big beard. So he just seemed older.
Yeah.
And he probably about, I've never asked him his age, and I think he would be embarrassed if I did. And then I had a woman by the name of Miss McIntyre. I do not know what her first name was. She taught us how to write. And gosh, I mean, she was just brutal. I turned in my first paper and I got it back, and I mean, you'd have thought I wrote it in red. She just beat me up, and but I mean, she was one of the finest teachers. I took 2 courses from her, you know, composition and advanced composition, and I was coming out of a good high school where I kind of did know how to write, but not by her standards. And so I mean, I've been, as you can tell, I've been blessed my whole life, not without pain, not without, you know, disappointment, but you know, I kind of started on third base, and so big deal, I scored. I should have scored. Then with all the advantage and you know, people who cared about me, anything I do with my life to give back, it just pay back. I can never pay it back, never.
You've given to us today, and so, and I'm supposed to be timing, and I just completely forgot my timer up there, so I have no idea. I know we're supposed to go back in at,
Well, you know, I'm a pinch hitter. What happened to the guy that was gonna be me?
that was, Malik Curry.
Yeah, Malik, yeah.
Yeah, from Union, in Maine, and, I
did some
think
consulting.
they told him they could not travel. I think they were told that they could not travel, and he had committed, and then they would not allow him to. And so we do
Should
have.
I ask somebody?
Huh?
Should I have asked somebody if I was allowed to go?
I don't know, I guess there's probably nobody that's gonna tell you no, but he's a newer president, so, you know.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
So I was glad, you know,
I'm from the Northeast, and Maine has been going through a spike
Yeah,
recently, so I think
Yeah.
from a leadership perspective,
yeah.
to then go and travel and not follow the
You know,
position
I
of
bet
some
you-
politicians who.
I bet the 3 of us are in
Right.
agreement on this. I have been, you know, how should I say this nicely? I wasn't a Trump fan, and I'm not a Biden fan. You know, I really do have some serious concerns about the quality of people that are currently running for elected office in our nation and in our states. But that's a topic for another conversation. But I'm not very critical of them either. I wasn't, you know, people just love to beat up on Trump, and now they're taking joy beating up on Joe Biden. And I don't spend a lot of time on that stuff. I just think we're not in their shoes. You know, they got 1,000 things coming at them at once, and I really believe that, in spite of his kind of poor public persona, that Donald Trump was trying to do what he believed to be in the best interest of our nation. I might not have agreed, you might not, but I don't think he was being malicious about it. Nor do I think Joe Biden. You know, Joe's, and I know him, and you know, I think he's doing the best he can with the information that he has in hand. And so these governors that, you know, have been getting beat up left and right with this decision, you know, they're trying to be judicious and careful and err to the side of caution, which that's the one part of it that I think.
Well, Joe certainly gets the benefit of the doubt having had a lifetime of service and
Agreed.
exemplary service and character. Trump doesn't have that
No.
background, so I would always default to giving Joe the benefit and saying, at least you're trying here.
Yeah, me too.
And if he screws up one thing or another, it's not because he's enriching himself. It's not. Could have done that a long time
I'm
ago.
gonna grab my timer thing, because I just.
No, you know,
remember
I agree. You know, and I know Joe Biden. Spent an evening, or actually a day and a half with him when he was in the vice presidential debate. that we had in Center College. And he is a genuinely nice human being. Whereas Trump, Trump reminds me of the guy I knew in 7th grade that I didn't like to hang out with. Because he was just a jerk, and he was a little bit of a bully, and I was, my reputation, if you went back to Kettering, Ohio, was John never got in fights except with bullies. And I was a great defender. My dad finally had to pull me aside and said, John, you gotta stop this. You're gonna get in trouble. And I said, well, Dad, I'm gonna take care of it. When I see somebody being bullied, I take care of the business. And he said, yeah, and you're gonna get in big trouble for this. And he was my dad.
Well,
And
John Lewis calls that good trouble.
Well, yeah. But you tell the high school counselor that, it doesn't matter.
If we had to go on by what our high school counselors.
Oh, jeez. Amen.
One of the great joys getting near the end of my teaching career, it's the same thing that you saw, that there were people, not classes, not institutions, individual people. Baylor, where I'm teaching now, and I've done everything I needed to do to Baylor and won all these awards. And as you get closer to the end and you look back, who were the people that enabled it? And Baylor's new obsession, trying to be research 1 and tier 1, and the money into research. Because we don't teach, but only research. Which one? When I arrived in 72, like you, nobody had to publish. All they had to be was good teachers.
Great citizen.
And they reached out and came up with me, and there's 2 or 3 of them still alive, who I still call, and who still call me. And I'm just another idiot 18-year-old. And
In retirement,
Say that.
in retirement, the only thing I miss is people. I do not miss work. And I did it for 22 years. Well, I worked for 2 presidents at the University of Richmond, great people. But I was a go-to guy. I mean, that was a big enough place, and they were gone. Bruce Highland, who's one of the really outstanding people I knew and worked with. Bruce was never there. He wouldn't even tell me when he wasn't coming in. So, his meeting at 9 o'clock would show up, and they met with me. Bruce wasn't there. And it was a great training. So, it was a kind of an unexpected blessing to be able to do that sort of thing. But you're there at the University of Richmond. I'm on the board there now.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, they still wrestle with, are they going to be a place known for teaching and affecting young people's lives? Are they going to kind of lean in the direction of the R1? And many of the faculty, they favor that. They want to let me be known for, because it's real solitary. It's, they can kind of build a body of work that becomes noticed. But that's not the magic. The magic there is being a great teaching institution. And a center, that's one reason I stayed.
Yeah.
We kind of miss that. Now, there are some people that do research at a place like Center that is modestly noteworthy, but and we'll reward it when it happens. But it doesn't define what it is to be successful.
Right.
And when you're in a state like Texas, where we have these massive research universities, why would Baylor move assets to try to match atom smashers with A&M or UT or Rice? And what we have is distinctive.
I agree.
Faith-based excellence in teaching. And like you said, the older I get, the more I want to pass that forward to the kids. And that was the least you can do when Baylor gave me the confidence to go on. Never dreamed.
Well, that's why you won so many awards, is because you had a great foundation from outstanding teachers, and you absorbed that and became your for yourself. But that is important. You can't. I just don't believe that it should be an either or.
No.
I feel like we have a responsibility to teach these students as well as we possibly can. And the research is great. I think it informs our teaching, but it can't be done at the cost of good teaching. I feel like that is an unacceptable trade-off, and because our students need the best that we can give them.
there's been, whether you believe the rankings or not, whether, Carnegie US News has been hitting around 75. If you put all the money you want in, you're not going to push those guys in the top 50. You're not going to.
No.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is that as a student of the rankings,
Yeah.
they really are of very little value, except that you notice. I mean, at some point, somebody, that same family's gonna look behind a curtain and say, how are they different then? And really, the thing that they're looking for, most families, is, are you gonna do things that will change my daughter's life and help her to be prepared to make a difference for good? That's what they're thinking about. And that's, research has very little to do with that.
Exactly.
The problem we enter into, right, that Steve was talking about, the demographics and what's going on. Being from New England, where we've been dealing with this demographic thing for a lot longer than other parts of the country, right? It's
Yes.
the institutions that are able to focus on the teaching and that do focus on the teaching are a lot of the times the smaller institutions, but a lot of them are going to struggle with what's happening, right? Because they aren't number 75 on the top 100 list. They don't get the extra brand recognition and the extra marketing.
The extra funding.
And then the extra funding. And
Yeah.
it creates perverse incentive, right, to try and go after those things, even though they aren't necessarily the best.
Well, there's that wonderful phrase that is none of these are altogether true, but people root for underdogs and they give to top dogs.
Right.
Oh, wow.
People root for underdogs, but they give to top dogs, whether giving us their money or whether sending their children. They give to top dogs.
Well, root for the top.
That's very-
But you want to win with the top dogs, right?
So, but I do think, there's the demographic thing, that really is something I think that you've got an awful lot of college presidents and senior administrative people that they've forgotten that. I mean, that's been laid in stone since the early part of this century, that this rapid decline in live births in America. And it's a precipitous decline beginning here at about 21, and then it goes down to about, I think it's 26, 27, and then, it kind of flattens. But there's no, in fact, one of the things that was said, with what's going on now, it would be really surprising to imagine we're going to have a kind of a rebirth of live births in America. I think for all kinds of reasons, the pandemic, one of its lasting impacts may be that these small, intimate families have kind of become the norm, and they're going to stay the norm. For a younger person to decide to have 5 kids, that's not on the table anymore.
No.
Well, it's not even an affordable option for most people anymore,
Yeah,
because
that's right.
the income stuff is, the middle class is kind of, melted, and we have
Yeah.
too many, if you're low income and you have 5 children, you're in serious
Very
trouble.
cooked.
Yeah.
That's part of Mary's thesis of the book is everybody, all these tier 1s, providing for the same little pool of 18% kids from middle class to
Yep.
middle class white. Whereas the great majority of people who want college nobody's recruiting out. Nobody is tapping into
The non-traditional
the
market.
non-traditional.
But now remember, even if you add them in, it's still a smaller number. I mean, we do a better job of recruiting, students of color, people from other countries. I mean, and I think a lot of institutions are doing that and have been. I know at Center, we've been doing that for 20 years and have seen some real significant shifts in diversity and all the rest. But at the end of the day, the number counts are smaller, even if you add in those folks. And so it's going to be a rough ride. And some of the places that are kind of hanging on by albeit a rope, not a thread, they're going to be some. Of course, I've lived through this twice. We know that, which is this doomsday is that American higher education is there's going to be hundreds of colleges evaporating. Well, it ended up probably being a dozen or so that went out of business. They were in deep water before, and this was just a final straw. This time's different because it's built on enrollment, and if they aren't out there to be recruited, you can't recruit them.
Right. And the growth that we did was based on enrollment, right? So we
Absolutely.
expanded based on enrollment without looking at projection, right? As you said, when I started enrollment in 2003, right? We knew this was coming. 20
Yeah,
years
it's-
ago.
it's what he did.
Right, this was the beginning of my career, but it's, the thing that's been clear to me, and it's the great thing for me in this conference is, has been, how is an institution, do we take the fact that it's a political entity and it's a business? And those two things seem at war with each other.
Yeah.
Right, and things like enrollment and the revenue, that is the business side of what we do, the teaching, right, the political side of what are we researching, where are we going, how are we, what are the grants, is this political side, and they just don't seem to align
Right.
very well.
Right, it's gonna be,
And it seems to be the common refrain at this point is we're not on the same page, or there's the point where not to disparage the faculty or the amazing faculty, we're not always concerned about the same issues.
You know,
And I'm not sure we're focused on this issue.
Again, I don't want to steal from Joel, but, I don't know, I got away with this. Now, whether as president could get away with it now, I don't know. Which was that those things are, at a good college or university, the thing that faculty should own is the academic program. Period. They want to, when I got there, and we still have a faculty, an admission committee on which faculty serve. But it's more designed on how do we sharpen our knives? It's not trying to put up borders on what they're allowed or not to do, or how deep into the floor they can go. You got to leave that to the experts, I believe, in admission. Now, to invite people to know about it, but this idea of what is it that the faculty should own? They should own the academic program, and I've been underscoring that my entire presidency. I actually don't think that has to change. I think they can continue to own the classes that are taught, the kind of programs that are offered up as part of the academic program. But for them to make decisions about admission or the size of the new residence hall that needs to be built. Now, if you got somebody on your faculty who has expertise, they can actually add value to that conversation, amen. But this notion that they need to be represented, and I told, I said, when I got there, this was in 1998, they said anything that is related to the academic program, the faculty need to be squarely in the middle of it and have significant responsibility and authority. But I said, if we're talking about building a swimming pool, the faculty didn't have to weigh in on that. Now, if they're really curious about it, maybe they're a swimmer, great. But I think a lot of presidents miss out on sort of segmenting, and the same thing on the alums. The alums don't get to decide what the academic program is. That's not their business. They can have an opinion, but I ran into one issue involved a guy from Texas. And Bob Brockman wanted to put together a Brockman Scholars Program. He wanted it to be just people who took, majored in economics. I said, we can't do that. I said, first of all, it's a bad idea. And secondly, it really runs against the whole notion of being liberally educated. And, the value of knowing about these other things alongside. I said, how about we cut it down the middle, and a student who's going to be a Brockman scholar, he's going to give us $100 million for this. There were going to be 20 of them a year, which was a little heavy, but we could live with that because we just adding 10 more students.
Sure.
And they'd be recruited. It was a full ride, everything, and all endowed. And I told Bob, I said, Bob, how about we require these students to be double majors? One of them has to be economics, then they can do whatever they wish. English, which would have been my choice. History, art, whatever. I said, then they have another dimension to their person that will make them more valuable. I talked them into that. The faculty, still don't know. The donor shouldn't decide what a person should major in. I said, okay. I said, he is deciding half of what they should major in. I said, this $100 million deal. I said, this can move us forward in ways that all will benefit from. And you know what? To their credit, they bought that. Now, did they like it? Did they celebrate it? Probably not. But they understood that. I kind of disagree with Joel. Joel could have had kind of a, back and forth, but the faculty that's much less attractive than my experience. My experience, has been almost completely positive. Even that one in Richmond, or when Bob was working with us at Center, it didn't happen, but it had nothing to do with us. You know, it happened, Bob's business dealings started going south, and, he was a complicated guy, but at his core, a good person. You will find people that say otherwise, they don't know who he was.
Well, if somebody's willing to pay for someone's education, I think it's perfectly acceptable for them to say, have some say in what that they're willing to pay for.
Yeah.
And I know when I went to college, my parents told me, they said, well, you can go anywhere you want, but we're only gonna pay for you to go to Sweetbriar. And I said, oh, since I had no money saved up, I thought, I guess that's where I'm going.
Sweetbriar started sound pretty good. It is a good place.
It is.
I did some consulting there when I was at the University of Richmond. I got kind of paid as a strategic planning guy, because I had this title, Vice President for Planning. My last 10 years, man, I could have gone, I could have stopped being at the University of Richmond and made more money as a consultant, because there's so much, and there's still a great need for people.
Oh, Lord, there's websites tracking the colleges that you're dying or merging each month now.
Yeah.
It's gone the last 2 years, 3 years, just hundreds of.
Yeah, I think the pandemic kind of put a Band-Aid on things because we had the PPP and I think that got people through that time, but now they're gonna be paying the piper, another couple of fees. And I think we're gonna see some people, I mean, Judson College, after what, 200 years closing, I mean, they called me, well, because they knew the Sweetbriar story
That's right, Sweetbriar's got a great story.
yes, they do, and I was to some extent involved, not to the, I wasn't one of the Big Ten alums that brought it, but I was in touch with them, and they did call on me, and so Judson called when they were gonna close, and I'm also Baptist, so and they said, can you help us? Can you help? And I said, I asked them some questions. I said, what's your endowment? What's your enrollment? What's your accreditation status? What, it was all no. And I said, you're just gonna have to close and reimagine yourself, re-envision yourself. You could possibly get control if they're willing to, if they're going into bankruptcy, which apparently they were. Then maybe you can work out a deal where you can, I said, why don't you open a pilot training program for women there and just completely start from scratch and just go with the vocational aviation.
Yeah.
And because we need pilots like crazy, and all the airlines are trying to diversify and get women and minorities in. They probably will fund a lot of it. They may send you the planes, they may send you the simulators, they might give you a whole bunch of scholarship money. And you can start from scratch and then get your accreditation and then build back up and build something that is different, a niche that's different.
Which is the way a lot of them started anyway.
Yes, of course they
And
did.
with a theme or two.
Right.
They didn't start out as a liberal arts school and soup to nuts. They had a focus.
They had a focus.
For many of them was agriculture.
And we better go back.
To be fair, Sweetbriar story, as wonderful as it is, Southwest Assemblies of God Nazarene College of South Dakota doesn't have an alumni base.
Right.
They put together 38 million in 3
That's
months.
Right,
And these ones that are falling are these small privates, and even in Texas.
yes.
Yeah.
You have to get the money,
We had a study 25 years ago that said there are too many Baptist colleges in Texas. The Cardinal report said we can possibly support 4. Now you're being the biggest one.
Yeah.
The state's big, one in each quadrant. And all of Baylor are struggling. And if you're a kid, you want to go to Plainview, Texas, or the Panhandle to be a Baptist. Or you go somewhere with the tallest climbing wall and the biggest thing.
I know.
Yeah, A&M added a couple of feet.
And God bless the small-
They'd be higher than Baylor's.
Colleges, but do we need, the day now with automobiles, do we need a seven which are struggling? Or can we consolidate? Is that a bad thing automatically?
But I think those are the questions, right? I started admissions, right, but I left that a very long time ago. I think those are the questions that I find that businesses we ask all the time, right? Where profit really is what we look at. If we have to merge and we have to become part of something else to survive, it's great to do that. But whereas educational institutions, even though we are a business, we don't want to entertain that statement, right? Because we could come up with very creative ways to say, we're going to merge these Baptist institutions and create this thing. We're gonna take this campus over here and it's gonna become aviation because we know that's a needed thing. We're gonna take that campus over there and it's gonna become, and the name of it's going to be 30 names long in order to incorporate everybody, but you're still gonna be there, right? So
Right.
we're gonna take those ideas, and I don't know.
But that kind of disruptive change,
Yeah.
Very hard.
it's just not, it's just not in the working group what it is to be a college university.
What, no, that's why, I appreciate what you're talking about, leadership, right?
That's gonna have to change.
Which
Yes.
is the risk of,
Yes.
but it's the risk of leadership that you were talking about, right? And saying, these are the things we have to take on. And I'm gonna stand up and take them on, because it's sort of the thing we have to do, whether or not it's going to be the popular thing to do.
Well, I know
It's a very hard thing.
none of you are from here, but in fact, I'm trying to imagine which way I should be pointing here. There's a Catholic college by the name of St. Catherine's, and it's about 30 minutes from here. And if I drove you by, if the four of us drove by there, five of us drove by there, you would think, well, gosh, there's like something going on over there that's pretty good, been closed for 10 years. They overbuilt and they were underfunded. They had a great strategic plan on what they would look like, and if I drove you by it, you'd say, whoa, that is handsome. They got a little football stadium and a track around it, and then they got kind of what clearly is their main administrative building. It's gorgeous. 2 or 3 really handsome academics. They put a science building that any good liberal arts college would be glad to have on its campus, because I helped design it. And they built it. I remember all the while I'm saying, guys, how are we paying for this? Well, it's built on the prospect of enrollment growth.
Oh,
I said,
dear.
okay, so you guys out here in the middle of the country. I said, you're not a prestigious place.
Oh, jeez.
And you're a niche to begin with the Catholic.
That's right. It's the Catholic tradition, while it's strong in Kentucky, it's not like being in Boston,
No.
or Pennsylvania, or Ohio even. And so, boy, but they just had this dream, that they were going to be able to do it. And they went completely bankrupt. And in fact, I talked to our board at Senate, this is at least 10 years ago. I said, let's buy it. And they said, well, what are we going to do with it? I said, we can buy it for pennies on the dollar. Let's buy it and imagine the kind of repurpose, like what you were saying. And maybe we turn that into, I don't know. And
That was my first thought when you started talking about this was, did you look at buying it?
Because,
because we, and actually I had a couple of trustees, again, things were going, to their credit, things were going so well at Center. Why do we want to complicate our lives with an all, campus, and then try to figure out what we would do with it? I was the big dreamer. I said, maybe this is our opportunity to break off into some kind of graduate level instruction away from our home campus, because it was closer to Louisville, about the same from Lexington. And I said, maybe we could pull that off. And actually, to our faculty's credit, there were some of them in the kind of the more like econ, finance.
Yeah.
They could imagine how that might work, but it didn't happen. But I still think it's good. It would have been a good idea. But, the other thing Stephen did say, one thing that I think young presidents, they want to win all the time. Who wins all the time? That was one of the great, magics of my involvement in athletics growing up. Is, I got comfortable with losing. I didn't like to lose. I hated it. But it's a part of playing. It's a part of being in the game. You win, and you lose. And actually, if you can bat better than 500, you're going to probably be okay for a while. But they get this sense, anything other than a victory is just a bitter disappointment. I'm over that stuff in a day.
What was, we were hearing yesterday, we were talking to President Obama and talking about trying to change some things by laws and not getting what he wanted every time.
Yeah.
And the guy on the Democratic side was busting his chops, and he said, dude, better is good.
Yeah. Better
We
is
have
good.
nothing better is good than what we have.
That's right.
And I hope our current set of politicians will learn we can
Well, but even in being fair to the politicians, our citizenry is turned into, well, if I don't get everything I want, I didn't get anything.
Right.
We're kind of thinking is that, young people in particular, is not perfect, then it's not right for me. And I've never known perfect. I just, our boys they're now, of course, they're 43,
Yeah.
44 and 41. And it's pretty interesting to, I told Susie, we really helped them be ready for life. Because we taught them about victory and defeat, and in a commune, if it doesn't work out, then you take stock of your situation and then you strike out in a different direction. You don't wander around, and feeling sorry for yourself for 6 months. And I'm also one of my chapter titles is tough and gentle. Are those two things all that far apart? And I'm of the opinion they're not. That be a tough-minded, person of resolve, but you don't have to lose your gentleness, your sensitivity. Those are compatible. And but to listen to most people, you're either angry or you're a pushover. No, I don't think it's one or the other.
Roush, thank you so much.
Hey, this was fun for me.
I have a book for you. It's a gift for you. It's my